The culture is your parents are always right or they're second to God. And if
Yeah.
you question them, you're questioning authority. And that's not really encouraged in our culture. You're supposed to accept what elders tell you because they're older. And by that definition, they're smarter and wiser. And if they abuse you, you should stay silent because that's just the culture. They're older than you. You shouldn't speak up. You shouldn't challenge them.
That's right.
So we've learned that it's all right for elders to abuse us just because they're elders, even if we're smarter than them, even though we know better, even though it's right in front of our face, like this man, that his mother was, I'm assuming, illiterate and did not know how to manage money because if she knew how to manage money, she would have been wealthy. The fact that he had to give her $20,000 is proof she does not know how to manage money. And I'm sure he understood that.
Hmm.
But out of fear of saying no to his mother and questioning an elder, he just chose to be silent
Hmm.
and watched her waste his money. But he understood what was going on. He just wasn't brave enough to stand up to his mother and say, no, I'm not going to allow you to do this because I understand you don't know how to manage money. You don't know what to do with money. I'm certain, like many of us, he grew up in poverty. How can your mother all of a sudden know what to do with $20,000 when you're an adult?
Hmm.
It's just fear. And we're very trained to fear our elders. You know, we're taught to be silent and keep our heads down and questioning authority. The response you get from your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, it's intense and nobody wants to go through that. So we just stay quiet and go home and lick our wounds and go through hell. But the catch is, like you said, you never recover and you just become so bitter and it breaks you.
How do we break this cycle, man? It drives me crazy.
Well, first, we have to acknowledge that age doesn't equal wisdom. Just because you're older than me doesn't mean you're smarter than me.
That's right.
That's the first thing. The second thing is we have to be willing to be by ourselves and to be rejected by the family. The family is who comes after you, and nobody wants to deal with that intensity. People calling you, cursing you, telling you you're a terrible child. It's a horrible feeling, and we want to avoid it. But we have to be prepared for it because when your parent was abusing you, these people weren't standing up for you either. And when your parents pass away, you're just left angry. And what do you do with all of that anger? Are you just supposed to swallow it, or do you turn around and punish your children? What your parents do to you, their own parents did to them.
That's right.
You know, it's just punching down. Your parents are poor, they've never had any power. You know, African society told them they were nobody. So who were they going to be a somebody to? Their children. That's the only people they have power over, so they exercise it. It's this cycle of I'm nobody outside my home, but at least to my children, I can be, as you call, a god. So I'm going to make them worship me since I can't get it outside my house. And so it presents as abuse. And we just keep perpetuating. If you want to do better for your children, don't let your parents rob you. Honestly, you know, if your parents rob you, they don't respect you and they don't see you really. I'd have to question the familial bond you have with your parents if they're willing to rob you like that.
It's crazy, man. These things happen 24/7, and that's why people like me that exist outside the conventional box of reasoning, and it drives me nuts. Like what you said earlier, this idea of you do not challenge them, even when they are blatantly wrong. Doesn't matter how meekly spoken you are, how
Yeah.
softly spoken you are. If you just say, "Oh no, this is wrong," they think, "Oh, you shouldn't
Mhm.
challenge their thought process. You shouldn't say they are wrong." I mean, I've heard even in our community, and this is not a joke, like parents have been cornered, they've been uncovered, exposed, for stealing from their children or for selling their assets, and then they will come out shamelessly saying, "Yeah, I gave birth to you." Like, what the bloody hell does that even mean? How does giving birth to me give you the express right to rob me blind?
It's because African parents view children as possessions. If I own
Yeah, that's
you, I
right.
can do, yeah, if I own you, I can do whatever I want with you. Why should you talk back to me? I own you. Many African parents believe they own their children. Children are their possession, so they can do whatever they want with you. You know, abuse is part of African culture, even though people don't want to acknowledge it. Physical
Mm,
abuse, verbal abuse, financial abuse. Parenting in African culture involves a lot of abuse. It's normalized. And, you know, their attitude is if my parents treated me this way and I never spoke up, why should you speak up to me?
that's right.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
either we break the chain and chart our own course and go in a different direction and understand that when we break the chains, we also break these relationships, that these people will stop speaking to us or cast us out or declare us dead, or we accept that we have no boundaries and we're willing to be abused and punched down on, and that's it. So, I don't know what else to say. It's we're adults and we're in charge of our own destiny. But I feel for people who are scared. If all you know is your parents are gods, it's hard to deviate, even though Franklin is pointing it all out in front of your face. It's scary to stand up to people you view as larger than life. You're intimidated, and African parents are very good at intimidating their children.
Like you see a grown man in their 40s, late 30s, in their 40s, even in their 50s. I'm telling you, man, if I wish I can show you the truckload of emails and stuff that I get where some of these grown-ass men and women, they find it absolutely impossible, like really hard, to look at their parents in the eyes and say, hey man, listen, this is my marriage, this is my life. You know, mom, listen, you've got to respect boundaries. There are two people existing within the confines of this union. All right. This is not your playground. This is not your jurisdiction. This is not your bedroom. This is not somewhere you barge into. You haven't got the right to come in and start poking at my woman and stuff like that. I get 54-year-old man the other day. Oh, Phrankleen, I love your content. Oh, thank you for all that you do. But dude, man, I don't know. I don't even know how to look at my mom and say, Mom, you've got to stop. And I'm like, wow, you're 6 years away from being 60, man. 6 freaking years. A grown ass man. You're
Mm,
actually heading into the evening part of your life now. And you're still
mm,
telling me that you're too scared to wipe your mother's breast milk off your lips. Like, bro, just imagine you put 20,000 US dollars.
mm,
The universe knows, man. I'm not even going to, dance around this one.
mhm.
If a
That
parent
20.
takes £20,000, my money, and
Oof.
fleece it, and then their rebuttal is, oh yeah, because I gave up, fam, I will bang you up faster than the speed of light. I will make sure I go to the full extent of the law. I will claw back my
Mhm.
money. I don't care. Like,
No, yeah,
I'm that type of dude, man.
no, you're right. I
I'm that,
mean, $20,000 is not a little money. That's a lot of money. That's
that's
all,
a whole
even in
lot of
the
bread,
that's
man.
a lot of money. Like many Americans don't even have $20,000 in their savings, and this guy just gave it away. Like that's a shocking amount. The Americans who don't even have $1,000, and this man, I'm sure, went through a lot to scrape up that 20,000.
Here in the UK, the average amount that black families leave in their bank account for their families, £1.
Hmm.
So imagine you then break your back, whatever, you work so hard, you manage. And I've known cases where people actually, they might have like maybe 10 grand in their personal
Mhm.
savings, and then they take a bit of loan. Maybe they're trying to start up a business back home, and they've done their calculations that, oh, you know what, if I can grow this business, I'll be able to pay back the loan over such and so period. And then the money lands in the hands of unscrupulous parents or like
Mhm.
siblings and all that, and they fuck you over. And then
Mhm.
they are monetarily, they are trapped now. And then you're telling me that, oh, don't, yeah, 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 don't, oh yeah, because it's your mom. I thoroughly respect the
Mhm.
position of the previous brother that spoke, and I understand. But bro, me, I'm
Mhm.
gonna go out guns blazing. And I mean guns blazing.
The majority of us are told to do nothing and to be afraid and to hide and just be silent. We're not taught to
I'm
fight.
a black sheep in my family. And you
I
know
think
why? Because I speak up, because I say no, and I would
you
go to war with
you
anybody.
just said
Not
it.
because I'm
Speak
a bad
up.
person. I'm not an
You
evil
just
person, but I
but
don't
you just
take
said it.
crap. If
Yeah.
this is wrong, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
say this is wrong.
But
You
you just
know,
said it. Speak up. What happens as African children when we speak up? You get slapped down physically and verbally. So you learn it's better
that's
to
right.
shut up and avoid being hurt. So as an adult, you're going to do the same thing because when you were a kid, if you ever dared speak out, you knew the consequences. You're told from a
And this is
child.
and they would tell you, oh, you are this one is quite prevalent in the Nigerian community. Oh, you'll be cursed. There's always some
Mhm.
attachment to some made up
Yes,
spiritual nonsense. That,
unknown.
oh, you wouldn't end well. Oh, some curse.
Mhm.
Wait, what? You stole my money.
Well, there's this
It's
belief in my
actually very
friend.
painful. You
No, it
stole
is
my
painful.
money. I gave you
Yeah.
money to buy me a parcel of land. Help me build a property. You then think you are clever in your tiny little fish brain. You then go to take pictures of someone else's property in order to keep me in blindness,
But
to
are we
suppress
really
my
blind?
suspicions. You think you are clever. So, what you're doing in the background is you blow through my hard earned money. And then I find out, and then you want to tell me
But
that,
Franklin,
oh,
here's the
oh yeah,
question.
I gave birth to you. So, I
But
have the right
Franklin,
to fleece you.
how,
No
but
chance.
here's a legitimate question before I wrap up. How long
Yeah.
have you been on YouTube telling people what happens? How many people have heard your message? How many other Africans have put out this message about what happens? Do we really not know, or are we too scared to point it out, even though we know exactly how it's going to end?
You
At this
see,
point, I can't believe we don't know.
I think what we are dealing with, and I'm telling you the scale of this, right? Because of the amount of emails that I receive, and I think the damage emanated from, when, of course, when we're young, children are like sponges, and through the formative years, right? The mindset's been conditioned. It's the same thing with religiosity and stuff. So they've used all of these nonsense, this toxicity, to condition the minds of a lot of people. Like you see a grown man. I mean, yeah, I sort of grew up, but with some of these things that I'm talking about. But I don't know. I'm not superhuman. I don't have a battery pack in my back. But I've just always been like that. Like I grew up. The moment I become an adult, I look at things and I just think this is bollocks, man. This is crap. No. So speak up and challenge it. You'll have some people put energy into. Oh no 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 no! Shh, shh, shh. Don't say
Mhm.
nothing. Leave it. Oh no 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 no. Oh, he's 60-year-old. You shouldn't say that. Wait, what?
Yes,
What has
we
that
just
got to do with the price of bread? He's a 60-year-old. He has just defrauded me. So
mhm.
because he's 60, he needs to get away with it. Do you see?
No, I agree with you. It's violence. It's a culture of violence, and it's not just Nigerian culture. It's not isolated. It's across the entire
Oh, of
continent.
course, it's not unique to Nigeria, but
Um,
I'm just talking from that point of view,
no, no,
of
I'm
course.
only saying that to point out that it's an African thing. It's not a Nigerian thing. It's not isolated. Like if you go to any African country, you get the same story from Africans over and over and over and over again. So it is African culture then, because across the whole continent, it's the same story. Different countries, different ethnic groups, but we have the same story. And maybe what this person just posted is the truth. We always think that our parents are different, but I don't know if I believe that, because as kids, you see how your parents behave, you know how they move, you know how they treat you, you know when your parents respect you and when parents have no
Um,
respect for you.
somebody's saying, "Oh, this woman still getting it wrong." It is not culture.
Like I said before, if it's not a culture, how can we all have the same story across the whole continent? If it wasn't
Thank
the
you.
culture, only Nigeria would have this story, or Ghana, or wherever, and we wouldn't have the same story. But how can 50 countries, 2 billion plus people have the same story? And I'm not saying all 2 billion, but it's
Yeah, yeah.
prevalent. it's your channel is full of other Africans who are saying it happened to me too, and I'm from Uganda, I'm from Ethiopia, I'm from South Africa. That shows it's a culture because it's happening over and over again across the whole continent. How many of us grew up being beaten? How many of us grew up
Hmm.
being beaten in school? How many of us grew up being told to shut up? How many of us knew not to question authority? How many of us used to be in church for 3+ hours listening to some pastor talk about nonsense, but you couldn't speak up because you knew what would happen to you? We all have the same experience, even though we belong to different cultures. That must
That's
make it
right.
a very African thing. It's not a coincidence. But I guess the last thing I would say is gaslighting. That last poster tried to gaslight us and tell us what we believe to be true is a lie and that what we see isn't exactly what we see. And that's a big part of why we allow parents to abuse us, because they basically tell us to our face, what you think happened, that you abused me, that you financially violated me, didn't really happen. And that's why you should let it go. It's the same thing he
That's
said, right? It's not the culture. What you think isn't true. Pick something else to point out. But I know
that's
my
right.
truth and I know it's a fact. How can you tell
That's
me what I know to be a fact isn't a fact just because it makes you uncomfortable? It's the gaslighting. And that last poster just demonstrated it. This man said
anyways.
$20,000 was stolen from him. Your channel is full of people saying how they've been robbed by their parents, but
Too
he says
much.
it's not the culture.
You know
So it's
what's funny?
gaslighting.
I could sorry to interrupt you. I could come up with these similar content on a daily basis, like over and over. Like, it breaks my heart, man. It breaks my heart. This particular one that came in is like really fresh. 20 grand. Bro, I would lose my freaking mind, man. And then somebody would say to me, go back for long. Leave it. Let go and let God. You got to be back in mad.